What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing some battles in the Open Great League featuring some Pokemon that gain access to new moves this season that you probably already forgot about, with Dhelmise gaining access to Brutal Swing, Lumineon gaining access to Aqua Tail, and Shadow Kyogre gaining access to Avalanche. Now, I've got to be honest with you guys, there's a reason you forgot about these move updates. These Pokemon aren't very good. Dhelmise is not awful, it actually has quite a few different moves that are viable. I've opted for Shadow Ball since it did get buffed this season as well, but then you got Lumineon and Kyogre, and unfortunately, they kind of just suck. Lumineon actually has a pretty good stat product, similar to likes of Fortress or Celio or Kanto Marowak, but Water Gun is just such a meh fast move, and Silver Wind isn't exactly the best coverage for this Pokemon. It also has access to Blizzard, I believe, but it would just take way too long to get there. And then Shadow Kyogre has a similar issue where the fast move is just so slow and clunky. I think with Waterfall, it takes like 6 moves to get to Avalanche and 8 to get to Origin Pulse, which means it gets basically outpaced by everything in the meta. The ideal plan would be to get shields down for Kyogre to sweep in the endgame, but Lumineon unfortunately just isn't forcing shields against anything. Even with all of that said, I did still pick up some crazy wins with this team, so let's just get into the question of the day. What's the worst buffed Pokemon you've tested out this season? Let me know in the comment section down below, and with that being said, let's get into the battles now. Let's go into the first battle, leading Dhelmise into Magcargo. Obviously not great for me, but I've got 2 water types in the back, so I'm going to go for 1 Shadow Claw, swap into Lumineon, and unfortunately the opponent is quite quick to swap into their Credilli. However, we've got access to Silver Wind. Silver Wind gonna hit for super effective damage, and the opponent does no shield. I'm also gonna no shield, and they bait with a Rock Tomb. That is huge for me, because now I can reach an Aqua Tail on the CMP tie. I am debuffed, this won't get the KO. However, the opponent might be desperate for switch advantage. They might not know that's just an Aqua Tail, and so they end up shielding. Rock Tomb gets the KO there, but now we can come back in with the Dhelmise, and I don't really want to tank a charge move, so I will just fire off the Brutal Swing here, throwing on CMP. Brutal Swing gets the KO. I'm going to go for 2 more Shadow Claws, then swap into my Shadow Kyogre, dealing insane damage with those waterfalls. They fire off the Rock Tomb, debuffing my attack stat. They come in with Florges, and we still don't reach that Avalanche just yet, so I'm going to use my final shield. They go for the Trailblaze there. I'm now going to look to overfarm, throwing the Avalanche as late as possible, 1 turn before they get to the next charge move, and Avalanche grabs the final shield. At this point, all shields are down, of course. Trailblaze easily going to get the KO there, but we can come in with the Dhelmise, and I can overfarm, throwing Brutal Swing on CMP, winning CMP. Brutal Swing, despite being resisted, gets the KO, and we're just 1 Shadow Claw away from the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball, of course, easily takes out Magcargo, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG to opponent there into the next battle. We see Talonflame in the lead, so once again, not a great matchup for me. Once again, going for 1 Shadow Claw, then swapping out, and unfortunately met with Ludicolo. But once again, met with a Grass-type Pokemon where Silver Wind, whilst not a very good move here, is still going to be decent in terms of its coverage. This time, I'm actually going to shield, because I feel like they're just going to full send the Leaf Storm, which they do. And now, actually, this isn't that bad of a matchup. We can go for another Silver Wind here. Unfortunately, Water Guns and Aqua Tails, they are double resisted, but we grab a shield back from the opponent. At this point, we probably just no-shield this, but they actually bait with a Weather Ball. That is huge for me. That's going to allow me to reach another Silver Wind here, and we might end up grabbing both shields from the Ludicolo. So in the intro, I mentioned Lumineon not getting shields down against anything. Well, apparently that was just a big fat lie, as it's putting work up against the Ludicolo here. The opponent then swaps into Gastrodon, maybe expecting me to swap out immediately there. Not really sure about that play. Unfortunately, we don't have Power Whip, so we go for Shadow Ball. That does still get them very low, and at this point, it's going to be a Shadow Kyogre sweep. They go for Body Slam there. We can come in, get that Waterfall farm down, and let's see, they come back in with the Talonflame. These Waterfalls absolutely shredding through their HP. Now, I did actually use an Elite Charge DM specifically for this video on Origin Pulse. I got rid of Surf there because I felt like, oh, we've got a 45 energy move in Avalanche. Might as well run the nuke in Origin Pulse. But I don't think I landed a single one in any of these battles because there just wasn't any situation where I'd throw Origin Pulse. Either Avalanche gets the KO anyways, or we just don't get to the Origin Pulse. So yeah, bit awkward for me, but either way, GG's to a trainer into the next battle. We're going to see a Araquanid in the lead. Bit of a tricky Pokemon, but we're able to connect with the Shadow Ball. I then swap into Lumineon, and the opponent's going to bank so much energy before coming in with a Lapras. Now again, Silver Wind, not the best here. Hopefully we can get a boost or something. That would be quite ideal for me. At this point, I'm just going to no-shield this, and the opponent's going to go for a Sparkling Ario. So that probably implies they're not going to be on Skull Bash, instead having Ice Beam as their coverage charge move. We go for another Silver Wind here. Silver Wind is going to get them, actually, with the water gun damage into red health range. That is honestly quite respectable there. And they fire off another Sparkling Aria. Now, I'm actually going to come in with my Kyogre, recognizing that, well, if they didn't go for Skull Bash, they probably don't have it, meaning they probably have Ice Beam. So I don't want to tank the move on Dhelmise. We get a full waterfall farm down. We swap back into Dhelmise, and I'm hoping this isn't a Bubble Beam. But, of course, it is there. But they swap into Annihilate. And suddenly, we do still have some play. So at this point, we fire off the Brutal Swing. Brutal Swing grabs a shield there. The opponent is going to go for a Rage Fist and boost up their attack stat. And whilst I am double resisting counters, you can see they are adding up over time, which is not ideal. But we're going for another Brutal Swing here. Brutal Swing grabs the final shield, and we can throw yet another Brutal Swing. I am debuffed, but it gets the KO. They come back in with the Araquanid, but we don't quite have the Avalanche loaded. Is this just a Bubble Beam? It is the Bubble Beam, and we're also able to barely hang on, tanking one more Bug Bite. Avalanche gets the KO there, and 1 HP and a Dream. Kyogre surviving to take that game. So, GG's opponent there into the next battle, and oh my gosh, I'm going to tell you right now, you guys are going to get very annoyed with this battle, because I make one of the most frustrating plays I've ever made in the Go Battle League. In my defense, this was one of the first battles I did. And spoiler alert, I just forget which side the charge moves are on. But anyways, we're going to go for back-to-back Aqua Towers here. Honestly, not too bad for us so far. I can actually no-shield this. Unfortunately, though, if they do full send the drill run, they will outpace me and get to an Ice Punch here just barely before we reach another Aqua Tail. So Ice Punch gets the KO. We can come in with our Shadow Kyogre, and potentially we could go for a full Waterfall farm down here if they commit to another drill run, and the opponent, in committing to the harder hitting move there, which isn't resisted, they do actually get fully farmed down. So at this point, I'm going to shield this as they fire off the Night Slash, but they get the boost, which is certainly not ideal. At this point, I could have gone for Avalanche there, but you know what? We're going to commit to a full farm down, but I end up swapping out there. They come in with an Alola Marowak, and we can outpace them to the Brutal Swing. Brutal Swing is going to grab the final shield, and we have the Origin Pulse already loaded. All I need to do here is click on the right side. I forget which side it's on. Oh my gosh. We go for Avalanche. Avalanche is resisted damage, and we've just thrown away this game. That is so frustrating. But Bone Club comes through. It takes out the Shadow Kyogre, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG to opponent there into the next battle. You see Credilli in the lead. So they're going to be on Bullet Seed here, which is okay. This means that I'm more comfortable with tanking a Rock Tomb, whereas if they had Acid, that's neutral fast move pressure, I probably can't let that go through. But they swap into Talonflame. We come in with Lumineon straight away, but unfortunately, they can still reach that first charge move. They go for Fly, that's fine with me. I'm now going to look to overfarm just a little bit, and then go for the Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail is going to be grabbing a shield there from the opponent, but they can outpace me to the next move. At this point, I'm happy to just let this move go through, take the shield advantage, come in with Shadow Kyogre, and get the full Waterfall farm down. They come back in with Credilli, and we can reach an Avalanche, but actually, I'm hoping I can just commit one shield and fully Waterfall farm them down. Let's see. Unfortunately, that doesn't look like it's going to be the case, so we swap into Dhelmise. However, they come in with a Gastrodon. We full send the Shadow Ball there. We're just barely going to reach another Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball, of course, it's not double super effective like the Power Whip, but it puts them into farm down range. I can just safely shield this up here, and honestly, we don't need Avalanche for this battle. Origin Pulse would be more than enough damage, but it is supposed to be an Avalanche showcase, so Avalanche gonna be coming through here. The opponent likely just exited out of the app, and it takes out the Credilli, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's opponent there into the next battle, another Credilli in the lead. This time they are on Acid as the fast move, so this time I don't feel as good about no shielding that first charge move, as Rock Tomb will put me into farm down range. Also, excuse me there. Also, they do end up shielding that first charge move, so maybe could have gotten away with going for a Brutal Swing bait, but now I'm actually going to swap, bank the energy, and come in with my Lumineon. Honestly, don't really care what happens to Lumineon here. It's not the best Pokemon, and unfortunately, they do come in with Azumarill. However, they are going to go straight for an Ice Beam, which is a very strange decision here. Basically, I didn't choose to throw here because I was hoping they would just throw their energy straight away, and even better for me, they didn't even farm up to the Play Rough first. We go for Aqua Tail. We're looking to bank the energy, and then come back in with the Dhelmise. Now, I'm able to reach a Shadow Ball on the CMP tie with the Ice Beam, and Shadow Ball does connect. It does big damage. At this point, we're just going to no-shield this. Ice Beam gets the KO, but I can come in with the Shadow Kyogre and go for a full Waterfall farm down. The opponent actually swaps back into Credilli. They will reach a charge move here. However, I can shield once. They full send the grass knot, so they don't debuff my attack stat, meaning I don't need to clear any debuffs. We get the full farm down, and they come in with more Peko. Now, at this point, we don't throw on the best timing here, but we're going to go for the Avalanche. Avalanche grabs the final shield, and here I missed the swap. No, I missed the swap, and as a result, I swapped out, well, 3 turns later than that, and it ends up being a sacrificial swap there where I had a Silver Wind loaded. That would have got the KO there if I got that snipe properly, but I just missed the button there when I was trying to click on it, and as a result, we do lose that game. But GG's to Trainer into next battle. 2 avoidable losses so far, but we're going to see a Corviknight in the lead. So I'm going to stay in initially, as of course, sand attacks are resisted. I swap Catch the Move onto Luminion as they go for an Air Cutter. They get the boost there, which is unfortunate, but they do end up swapping out anyways into Credilli. They also do bank a little bit of energy before swapping out. We go for Silver Wind. Again, no boost there, unfortunately for me, but we're just going to no-shield this. Even a Rock Tomb gets me very low, but they do go for the Grass Knot. They get the KO there. I'm now going to come in with the Delmise. Going to look to overfarm. I wasn't certain if Brutal Swing would get the KO, so I'm just going to play it safe. Go for Shadow Ball, but they actually end up shielding there. So that did surprise me a little bit. They're going to go for a Rock Tomb, of course. We're now going to look to overfarm. They come back in with the Corviknight, and I can still reach another Shadow Ball, but I am debuffed, and it doesn't get the KO there, but we can swap, make the catch onto Shadow Kyogre. We also get a Waterfall through as we swap out there, and we get the full farm down. They come back in with Credilli just to be fully farmed down once again, and they're going to have a Gastrodon in the back, so we are full sending the Origin Pulse. However, they've still got a shield in play. Origin Pulse gotta be shielded there, unfortunately. At this point, we might actually still be able to lose this game here if they bait with a Body Slam and land a Water Pulse, because as you can see, Delmise isn't really tanking these Mud Slaps very well, but we're able to reach the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball gets the KO there, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle, and an awful matchup for me. Honestly, one of the worst core breakers to this team. However, the opponent's going to safe swap into a Rapidash, potentially like a double fire backline. I don't really know. But either way, I'm just going to shield this. Could be a Wild Charge. It is the Wild Charge. That would do a lot of damage, but now we've got Silver Wind, and Silver Wind is double super effective. I mentioned this was not great coverage, but it one-shots Meowscarada, and the opponent just going to concede the match there. They've got Quillfish in the back. Honestly, they still had play there, but either way, I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into next battle. We see Shadow and Empoleon in the lead. So, this is actually not that bad of a matchup for me, as I will outpace to back-to-back Brutal Swings. And by the time we get to back-to-back Brutal Swings, the second one should KO here if they shield the first. So, we're going to go for the Brutal Swing. Brutal Swing is going to be shielded, and now we can fire off that second one straight away. Technically, could have gone for one more Shadow Claw and thrown on CMP. However, I just want to get rid of that Empoleon immediately. They swap out there, and I just randomly swap into Luminion there. That was definitely a mistake. I was just swapping out because we got an ABB style team, but I should have waited to see at least what they came in with, and of course they came in with Charger Bug, which is definitely not good for my water types. However, we do get them fairly low, so we're going to come in with our Delmise. They do have the energy for a charge move to throw straight away, and actually no, never mind, I came in with Kyogre expecting them to throw immediately, which they don't do. And at this point, we do still have play here, but we've got to be smart about what we do. So I'm going to bank the Avalanche, come in with Delmise, and I'm able to reach a Brutal Swing on CMP. If I grab the shield here, we might be able to win this game if they're in 4 Waterfall farm down range. So Rock Tomb gets the KO there. Can we commit to the full farm down? It's close, but no. Kyogre just barely not able to do so. We go for Avalanche, but of course the opponent does have a charge move loaded on the Charger Bug, and anything they throw is going to KO. Discharge, super effective, takes out Kyogre, and unfortunately I do lose that game. But GG's opponent there into next battle. We see Charger Bug in the lead here. So at this point, this is definitely where we want to see it for this team. I am going to possibly no-shield this move, and they actually full send a Crunch, which nearly gets the one-shot. Oh, that is super frustrating. I believe an earlier battle I had, the opponent went for a Discharge, and I ended up shielding. So I was like, okay, I'm not shielding that again because I don't know what they're going to throw. But either way, it doesn't work out for me there, but at least I did land that Shadow Ball. They're going to come in with a Corviknight, and whilst, yes, this is a non-boosted Air Cutter, Shadow Kyogre is quite glassy, so I'm going to bank all of that energy and swap into Luminion. They go for Air Cutter. This time they do get the boost, which isn't ideal for me, but we can tank another one, even boosted, on the Luminion here. So the opponent goes for another Air Cutter there. I'm now going to look to overfarm. I'm going to throw just before they reach the next charge move. Arcatel definitely KOs from that range, but they're going to have a Gorgeist in the back now. It could be worse. Of course, they do have Incinerate as the fast move, which I am resisting on my team. Now, we're going to swap back into Kyogre, and I am, of course, going to have to shield here. The opponent, I believe, is just one away from the next charge move, so I'm forced to go for Avalanche immediately, but if they throw immediately, I will be losing this game. However, the opponent loses track of the energy on Shadow Kyogre, and as a result, Avalanche gets the one shot, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up in there into the next battle. We see Medicham in the lead. So a great lead matchup for me. The opponent is going to stay in initially here. I assume they're going to eventually swap out, and they do. They swap into Mandibuzz. And at this point, I'm just going to no-shield this first charge move. The opponent is going to full send a Shadow Ball there. So, I'm going to now look to overfarm. This is just going to be a foul play, which I can tank fairly comfortably. And then, of course, whilst I'm not running it, I do potentially have access to Blizzard. So, I am farming up a ton of energy, hoping to grab a shield advantage. However, it backfires as they no-shield, and they end up throwing straight away here. So at this point, I'm going to have to use a shield just because I've got so much energy. I need to at least get this Mandibuzz low if I'm not able to take it out, and we do finally grab a shield back from the opponent. At this point, I'm going to go for another Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail is going to get them very low, to the point where Kyogre can come in and farm them down. So we do end up losing switch advantage there, but I guess it's not the worst thing ever. We come in, we waterfall farm them down, and they come back in with their Medicham. So I'm definitely going to shield this as they fire off that Dynamic Punch. I'm then going to bank an Avalanche and swap and go for a CMP tie sack swap, hopefully also catching a Dynamic Punch in the process. So at this point, the opponent ends up shielding there. The opponent is going for the Dynamic Punch. That is going to be double resisted. They're going to bank, I believe, one away or two away from an Ice Punch there before swapping into a Bastiodon. Now, unfortunately for me, you can see two Shadow Balls. Whilst they are going to do a lot of damage, they won't quite get the KO here. So Shadow Ball is going to connect. I tried to snipe with Kyogre, but we just barely don't get the farm down. Stone Edge gets the one shot. I needed energy on my Kyogre to take out the Medicham, and unfortunately, we don't get that farm down, and so I lose that game. But GG's up in there into the next battle. Bastiodon in the lead this time around. Let's see if the Shadow Kyogre can get its revenge. We're also seeing Medicham, so some familiar faces. Not really sure why Medicham has sort of gained popularity recently. Maybe I'm just in the absolute piss of Elo ranges where people are still using this team, even though it's like 10 seasons too late. Counter has been nerfed. But either way, we're going to go for Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail is going to get them fairly low. And do I want switch advantage? You know what? I'm just going to no-shield this. They go for another Power Punch. We actually survived that. So I swap back into Delmise, and they come back in with the Bastiodon. So at this point, I'm going to go for the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball is going to connect, and it does decent damage there. I'm now going to shield this, and the opponent is going to go for a Stone Edge, and hopefully the opponent is kind of weak to the Delmites in the back. So I'm actually going to go for a Brutal Swing, expecting a shield. Brutal Swing is not shielded, however. We go for the snipe. Again, Kyogre not able to get that full farm down, and they still have a Bastiodon in the back. But we're going to go for Avalanche. Avalanche is going to be shielded. The threat of a potential Thunder is, of course, going to grab a shield there. They full send the play rough. Now, my Delmites is very low, but we do still have some play here. Of course, once again, I don't have access to Power Whip, but Shadow Ball is going to deal neutral damage. It will deal big damage. So at this point, I'm going to shield this up here, but I am wary of a potential swap back into the Bastiodon. The opponent swaps out there. We bank the Shadow Ball. That is absolutely huge for me because now we cannot lose this game here, assuming the buttons do come up when we come back in with Delmise, as Aqua Tail certainly puts them into range where Shadow Ball, if we can remember which side it's on, will be taking out the Azumarill, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. I'm going to see Delmise into a Corviknight. So once again, this is actually not that bad of a matchup for me. And this time, instead of catching the first move, I'm going to stay in, allow them to land one Air Cutter here. And Air Cutter does get the boost, but it doesn't really make a difference in this matchup because I would be shielding the next charge move anyways. However, Shadow Ball does big damage. So now I'm just going to swap catch the next move onto Lumineon. Of course, they are boosted there. Air Cutter still not doing too much damage, and they will reach another one, but we can commit to a full Water Gun farm down. They're now going to swap into a Gastrodon. That's fine with me. We can go for Aqua Tail here. Aqua Tail is going to connect. It doesn't really deal that much damage, but we can reach yet another Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail number 2 coming through is going to be shielded. I swap back into Delmise here. We have the Brutal Swing, but unfortunately, they do outpace me to that Body Slam. So going to go for one Shadow Claw, fire off the Brutal Swing, and Brutal Swing is going to connect. It doesn't actually KO, but it does force him to throw some energy. Body Slam takes me out there. We've got Shadow Kyogre, but it is even shields, and Shadow Kyogre is definitely not going to outpace anything in the back, especially not on a load of Ninetales. However, they throw on poor timing, and they do full send the Dazzling Gleam. So if I'm able to catch the next charge move here, we could be in, and we just barely hang on there. The opponent goes for Dazzling Gleam. We can Waterfall, farm them down, so the opponent just concedes the match. So you can see, even with that full farm down there, we still didn't come out with back-to-back avalanches, which is crazy. But GG's to that trainer into the next battle. And this is one of the weirdest teams I've faced this season. Not necessarily due to the Pokemon, but due to the movesets that we see. So here we go for the Silver Wind. I'm going to no-shield this, and the opponent is going to go ahead and full send an Outrage, which is quite unusual there. I guess Dragon Claw used to be the typical moveset in terms of the dragon typing, and then maybe Avalanche or Icy Wind as a secondary charge move. The opponent gonna go for the Avalanche there. They swap back into their Sand Slash, and we come in with the Kyogre. So at this point, I'm going to shield this, and the opponent's going to full send a Blizzard now as well. What the heck is up with all these nukes right now? I'm going to go for an Avalanche here, as I am scared of whatever their other charge move is. We get the KO there, despite it being double resisted, and they're going to come in with a Shadow Dragonair. Now, typically, Dragonair going to run Body Slam and Octail, maybe Wrap as this other charge move, in which case we resist everything here, so we should be fine, except it's another nuke, it's Dragon Pulse, and they can just Dragon Breath, farm me down, and unfortunately, we do lose that game. But GG's to the opponent, fair play for the movesets on those Pokemon. Into the next battle, Skeledirge in the lead. We're going to be safe swapping into Dhelmise. Once again, swapping out there after one Shadow Claw. Unfortunately, what that does mean is they can outpace me, do that first charge move, and then they swap into Azumarill. This is really not ideal because if they want to be really aggressive here, they can go for a full bubble farm down, coming out with a ton of energy. At this point, I realize my Switch Clock still isn't quite coming up yet, so I do throw another Arcatel here. Now I'm swapping into Dhelmise, and honestly, I'm going to have to double shield here, but I don't really mind that because if the opponent swaps back into Skeledirge, I can get off at least back-to-back Brutal Swings. So I'm going to shield here as the opponent does go for Ice Beam number 2. They swap back into Skeledirge, and here we've got so much energy. So Brutal Swing number 1 grabs the first shield there. We can go for 2 more Shadow Claws, throwing on good timing. Brutal Swing number 2 will be grabbing the final shield, and the opponent can't really commit to a farm down here as I would reach another Brutal Swing. Torch Song gets the KO. We come in with Kyogre. We get the Waterfall farm down. They're going to come in with a Shadow Kanto Marowak, and because we do have the energy advantage, we're just barely able to reach an Avalanche. Avalanche gets the KO there. They come back in with the Azumarill, and I realize they're going to reach an Ice Beam, so I swap out here. I wasn't sure if we would be able to farm them down with Lumineon after an Arcatel, so instead we make the catch. We can reach yet another Avalanche. Avalanche is resisted, but it will get the KO from that range, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. You can see Steelix in the lead. So I'm going to stay in initially just in case they are on Thunderfang. They're not. They're going to be on Dragon Tail here, so I can swap out of this matchup eventually. Going to wait for the Psychic Fangs. I'm actually going to bank a Shadow Ball first and then swap into Lumineon. At this point, I'm just going to no-shield this. Don't really mind, just another Psychic Fangs, but they swap into a Shadow Magical Leaf Victory Bell here, so that is interesting. Not really sure why, but Magical Leaf Victory Bell seems to have gained a bit of popularity recently as well. But either way, we are going to have a Shadow Ball banked. I believe we win CMP with Dhelmise, so I'm actually just going to throw this straight away. So Shadow Ball is coming through. Shadow Ball does get the one shot. They come back in with the Steelix. And again, this is just going to be another Psychic Fangs, so I will be no shielding here. Psychic Fangs does get me very low. Again, I'm going to bank a Shadow Ball, and then I swap into my Kyogre. So the opponent goes to Psychic Fangs there. They do allow a full farm down, but their final Pokemon is Bastiodon, and you can see, whilst my Waterfalls are chunking, they Smackdowns are absolutely shredding through me. That is not ideal. Of course, they're going to use their shield there. We do have the Shadow Ball loaded. Is this enough damage to KO, however? Unfortunately, no, it's not enough damage, and despite the fact that they had Steelix and Bastiodon, Shadow Kyogre just taking way too much damage from their fast food pressure, and we end up losing that game. But GG's to our trainer into the final battle of this video, and these battles are slightly out of order. This might be the battle I was thinking of, where I end up shielding, and it is just a discharge, yeah, so that was annoying as well. But either way, we're going to go for a Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball might connect, and if it does get the KO from that range. They come in with a Corviknight, and you know what, let's just full send another Shadow Ball. Waterfall. They didn't shield the first, they're not going to shield the second either, and now we can come in with Luminion. I don't need to shield this, could be a payback, don't really care. The opponent is just going to go for an Air Cutter bait. They don't get the boost, but they can reach another Air Cutter. Air Cutter is going to get me fairly low, and they do swap into their final Pokemon, which is Annihilate, but that's absolutely fine with me. We can go straight for Alcatel. Alcatel is going to be shielded. We can reach another Alcatel, and if they no-shield this, honestly, Delmize probably just fully farms it down, but they do end up double shielding. So you know what? We're just going to use Shadow Kyogre to force some energy. The opponent goes for Rage Fist. We can get off one more Waterfall, but it doesn't really matter. We can come in with the Delmize. The opponent... Bit of a weird animation there. They swap back into Corviknight to catch a charge move, but it doesn't work out for them, and as a result, we shield, we get the Shadow Claw farm down, and I'm able to take that game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.